Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at the feature race on Sunday at Gulfstream Park. Race 8 is the Sunshine Turf, going a mile and a 16th on the grass course for the Florida breds, and we've got 7 runners signed on for this race. So we take a look at the field, and haven't yet seen the morning line, but I would imagine horses like the number 1, Me and Mr. C, and potentially the number 4, Boppy O, could vie for favoritism in this race. The 1, Me and Mr. C, just going out for strong connections. Mike Maker, ridden by Irad Ortiz, coming in with some nice, consistent time form US speed figures, as well as Beyer speed figures. Those types of horses typically take money. Recovered from a poor effort two back to run well last time. So I think he looks pretty logical in this race, but you've got plenty of up and coming 4-year-olds such as Boppy O and the number 7 Super Blessing, who faced off in the Tropical Park Derby last time. It could take some money. So we'll be interested to see how this race is bet as the public assesses these runners. And one thing they might consider is the pace of this race as we take a look at the time form US pace projector, because there really is not that much speed signed on. And I think that makes you have to take a look at a horse like the number 5, Roaring Forties, who is actually trying to defend his title in this race. He was the winner of the 2023 edition of the Sunshine Turf, just controlling on the front end. So we'll see if Roaring Forties is able to pull off that feat 2 years in a row. He is likely to make the front end here, but I think that there are some others that could at least show tactical speed in this spot to potentially apply some pressure to him, including the number 4, Boppy O, who notably is putting blinkers on for this race. So we'll see what the plan is for him and jockey Javier Castellano. But if speed does not develop towards the front end, that could potentially work against a horse like the number 1, Me and Mr. C, who is much more of a confirmed closing type. And he does get that LP flag on the pace projector, indicating that he is the highest time form US late pace rating in the field. Well, let's begin our discussion of the contenders with the number 1, Me and Mr. C, and we'll take a look at his rebound effort last time when he recovered from a poor effort two back. That was his first start coming off a bit of a layoff in December, put forth a poor effort on the Tapeta surface, but not the case this time. Looks like he might actually win the race coming to the 8th pole here, but the number 1, Fly the W, able to burst forth between horses and put him away in the final 16th. Me and Mr. Cito puts up a good effort to be second in what was a pretty tough and competitive handicap last time out. That effort right in line with his best turf speed figures from last summer. This race, of course, is on the turf, and he just consistently earns those numbers in the 115 to 118 range when he's in form, and that's going to make him pretty tough against this field. Always helps to have a jockey like Irad Ortiz on the horse's back, and drawing the rail, he's likely to try to work out a ground-saving trip for this guy. So really just a matter of whether or not he can work out the right kind of trip from off the pace, because as you see, looking at his time form US past performances, he does have some red color coded pace figures splashed across his running lines, indicating that he's got some good setups in prior starts. We'll see if he gets the right kind of setup in this race. The number 2 is Forever Super, and let's take a look at his most recent start, coming off a brief freshening at Tampa Bay Downs last time. This was an optional claiming race, and that is Forever Super coming through along the inside, trying to save ground. Also in this race is Max KO, who we'll talk about in just a little bit, but Forever Super is the one that I would want to focus on because there really was not a whole lot of pace in this race. The number 6 Candidate able to control up front every step of the way, and that's Forever Super lunging along the inside at the very end of this race to finish in a photo with that eventual winner. And you will note the time form US speed figure of this race seems pretty flashy, a 126. That makes him a standout in this race. I'll just say, I haven't talked about this with my colleague Craig Mulkowski, who makes the time form US speed figures, but I would take that number with a little bit of a grain of salt. You see that it has the P notation next to it, and if you go in your time form US PPs on the DRF website and click on that speed figure, it gives the explanation of what that P notation means. And basically, it's a race where the pace was aberrantly fast or slow. And in this case, you can see due to those blue color-coded pace figures and that rising pace figure line, it was an extremely slow pace. So the time of the race was just much slower than you would expect for that class of horse. So the speed figure needs to be bumped up somewhat. How much, I think that's a little bit of a subjectivity in the number. Maybe the 126 a little bit too high for Forever Super, but do note when you look through the chart of that race, he gets a much faster number than everybody else in there because he was the one that made up ground into that slow pace, whereas others, such as the winner, benefited more from it. I think he actually got a time formula speed figure that was 7 or 8 points higher than the winner of that race candidate. So just something to be aware of with that last speed figure for Forever Super. But just in general, he's a horse who was really coming into his own last summer at Monmouth Park, beating up on weaker competition, but doing so in impressive fashion. And I'll be interested to see if jockey Paco Lopez, getting back aboard this time, can keep him a little bit more engaged in the early stages than he was in his most recent start. The number 3 is Max KO. He actually competed in this race last year. The Sunshine Turf was no match for the likes of Roaring Forties, who won that day, and even me and Mr. C, who was third. He came off a bit of a layoff last time in that same race that we just looked at behind Candidate and Forever Super, and got a decent trip. He was stalking outside, covering more ground than the ground-saving Forever Super did, but was in closer attendance to that slow pace and was just a little bit one pace through the stretch that day. Couldn't really make up the ground. As you can see, he got a bit of a pace upgrade, but not nearly as sharp as the pace upgrade that Forever Super received, getting a speed figure that is 9 points lower than that rival. Max KO on occasion has run figures that put him in the mix here, but watching his races, he doesn't always have that late punch that we've seen from some others in this race that I would rate just a little bit more highly than him. The number 4 is Boppy O, and he is a newly turned 4-year-old. And one that I think you can project some improvement for is he makes the first start of his 4-year-old campaign, coming now second off a layoff since returning from a layoff dating back to last summer. He competed in the Belmont Derby. That spot was just probably a little too tough for him. He went off at a big price that day and didn't get the savviest ride. He broke from the inside and seemed like his jockey was intent to get immediately off the rail when you probably wanted to save ground that day. So I would just draw a line through that effort. It's not really indicative of what he's capable of, even though we got a big speed figure, a bit inflated due to the competition. But coming back off the layoff last time, I thought he ran pretty well. He was more aggressively ridden, racing in the bridle throughout. That was an honest pace, not color-coded in red in terms of the pace figures, but he was in attendance to a pace that did come apart a little bit, got to the lead in mid-stretch, and just couldn't quite hold off the late charge of Super Blessing, who's in today, as well as the closing Irish Aces, who I believe went off as the favorite in that race. I think you can project some improvement second off the layoff for Boppy O, and adding the blinkers is an interesting twist for this runner because he does have the tactical speed, as we saw last time, to be competitive through the early stages. And I think being more aggressive with this horse could be the key to him having an improved result in this paceless Sunshine Turf. Up next is the number 5, Roaring Forties, who is that horse I mentioned is the defending champion in this race, and we'll take a look at him winning the 2023 edition of the Sunshine Turf. Like I said, he got to the front this day, was able to control the pace through moderate to slow fractions, and just sprint away at the end, able to hold off some rivals. That included me and Mr. C, who could be a serious foe for him once again this year. Roaring Forties, when you look through the vast majority of his form, he's really more of a one-turn, 6 to 7 furlong type of horse. He's gone route distances on occasion, but really he's only successful going route distances when he's able to control the pace, as he was in this race last year. More recently, he's run using different running styles and shorter races, such as two-back, trying the 2-turn 7.5 furlongs at Woodbine, made a big middle move into a fast pace and got run down at the end, cut back on the synth last time, wasn't as effective. I question his recent form a little bit, and also I'm skeptical of whether he can repeat the feat against what I believe is a slightly tougher field than the one that he met in this race last year. Number 6 is Space Runner, and he, like the one, me and Mr. C, is just a dead closer. I mean, he's going to drop back early, try to make one run, was able to sit in mildly closer attendance to a pace 2-back when he was successful at Tampa Bay Downs, but that was against a weaker field, and I think he's going to have to run better to beat this group. He was second after making a big run from last at the quarter pole in his most recent start, but again, step up in class from the fields that he's been facing. The preliminary time formulas race rating for this race is a 117. He's coming out of a series of races where the race ratings are between 110 and 111. You see that in the oval-shaped race information box in Timeform US through his past performances. So I think we're going to have to see a step forward from the number 6 Space Runner. And then on the outside is the number 7 Super Blessing, the other Live Oak Plantation Michael Trombetta trainee in this race. And let's take a look at his last race when he actually ran down Bapio, who we just talked about. That's Bapio, the number 3, highlighted on the lead in the red cap in behind him. That is Super Blessing, who's going to slice between horses and make this strong run to the lead in the final 16th, holding off the late charge of the favorite Irish Aces on this day. This was a nice step forward for Super Blessing. All things considered, I thought he got a pretty good trip, stalking in behind the leaders, finding that split in the mid stretch to come on through. He is going to have to get faster from a speed figure standpoint because he ran his top 2 numbers in his last couple starts, a 107 and 108. That's not quite good enough to be competitive with this field. However, he is a lightly raced, improving 4-year-old, and it does seem like Mike Trombetta has him headed in the right direction right now. And I think looking back at that Tropical Park Derby that he won might have been a stronger race than that Timeform US speed figure indicates, because you compare that to the Timeform US race rating for the race of 118. That indicates that there were a lot of horses coming into the Tropical Park Derby that had previously run much faster numbers than the winning 107 Timeform US speed figure. So possibly that was a stronger race than I think the raw result might indicate for Super Blessing. And I think you can project some improvement for him, especially when you take a look at that most recent workout on January 14th at Gulfstream Park over the Tapeta surface, 45-1. They really let him rip that morning, and I watched that workout on XBTV. He was moving very nice and fluidly through the stretch that day. So it's going to be interesting to see if Super Blessing can take that next step forward in this Sunshine Turf. Well, let's throw out my picks for this race, and many ways to go in here. I think trips are going to be critical. Ultimately, I wanted to find a horse that I think is going to be the right kind of price. And for me, that is the number 2, Forever Super. Just feels like he is a horse who is steadily improving, like the number 7, Super Blessing, who I also have in the mix. But I feel like Forever Super, going out for the same connections, might fly a little bit more under the radar coming out of that race at Tampa Bay Downs last time. That on the face of things, based on a final time speed figure, looks slow, but I think the philosophy of Timeform US of upgrading his number due to closing into the slow pace is ultimately the right choice. How fast did he actually run last time? I think that's up to some debate, but he is a horse that appears to be moving in the right direction. I like him being reunited with his previous regular rider, Paco Lopez, on this day, who does have a lot of success when he teams up with trainer Mike Trombetta. So the number 2, Forever Super for me in the Sunshine Turf, race 8 at Gulfstream Park on Sunday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.